What if I told you that behind one of America's most beloved pastors was a secret so dark it would shake the faith of millions? Pastor Zachery Tims, the man who went from a jail cell to leading thousands, was living a double life. To the world, he was proof that God redeems. But behind the sermons, the fame, and the cameras, something was unraveling. And when he was found dead in a New York City hotel room, the truth left everyone asking the same chilling question. How did it all go so tragically wrong? Before the fame, before the lights, before the cameras, there was a boy from Baltimore, Maryland. Born on April 18, 1969, Zachery Tims grew up in hardship, raised by a single mother in a tough neighborhood, surrounded by violence and temptation. By his teenage years, addiction had taken hold of him. Crack cocaine became his escape from a world that seemed determined to break him. He wasn't a preacher or a leader. He was just another lost young man headed down a road that ended in destruction. But something happened that changed everything. After being arrested and facing a long prison sentence, Zachery found himself alone in a jail cell. It was there, he later said, that he heard the voice of God. That moment became his divine turning point. He made a promise. If God gave him another chance, he would dedicate his life to serving him. And when freedom came, Zachery Tims kept his word. He enrolled in college, earned a degree in psychology from the University of Maryland, and began to rebuild his life. His transformation was remarkable. He became living proof that redemption was not just possible, it was real. In the mid-1990s, Zachery and his wife, Reva Tims, moved to Apopka, Florida, carrying nothing but faith and a dream. Together, they founded New Destiny Christian Center, a small congregation that met in rented spaces and prayed for growth. Week after week, their numbers grew. People were drawn to Zachery's honesty, his energy, and his testimony. He didn't just preach about deliverance, he was deliverance. His story of addiction and redemption made him relatable to anyone who had ever felt broken or unworthy of grace. By the early 2000s, New Destiny Christian Center had become one of the fastest-growing churches in Florida. Thousands attended his services each week, and his sermons were broadcast across the nation on the Trinity Broadcasting Network, TBN. He traveled internationally, preached to packed arenas, and published books that reached readers around the world. To the outside world, Pastor Zachery Tims was the ultimate comeback story. A man who had been saved by grace and was now sharing that grace with millions. But behind the applause and bright lights, cracks began to appear. With fame came pressure, and with pressure came temptation. He was no longer just a preacher. He had become a celebrity pastor. His schedule was relentless, filled with conferences, travel, and media appearances. He had to be everything to everyone: leader, counselor, father, motivator, and the weight of that expectation began to crush him. Friends noticed he seemed weary. His once vibrant energy dulled into exhaustion. His marriage to Reva suffered under the demands of ministry and fame. By 2009, after years of struggle, their marriage ended in divorce, a painful public separation that stunned their congregation. For many, it was unthinkable that the couple who built New Destiny could fall apart. But even through heartbreak, Zachery kept preaching. He smiled for cameras, spoke about forgiveness, and insisted that God was not done with him yet. Outwardly, he appeared strong, but privately, the same demons he had once defeated were creeping back into his life. By the summer of 2011, Pastor Zachery Tims seemed to be stepping into a season of renewal. His church was flourishing once more, his television appearances were on the rise, and his message of faith and hope was touching lives around the world. Outwardly, he looked like a man restored, strong, confident, and ready to move forward. But those closest to him sensed something was off. He had grown quieter, more withdrawn, often choosing solitude over company. He traveled alone, sometimes disappearing for days, explaining that he needed rest or time with God. Yet behind those words, whispers of concern began to spread. Rumors that old struggles might have returned. Then came the moment that would shake the Christian world. On August 12, 2011, Staff at the W Hotel in New York City discovered Pastor Tims lifeless in his room. He was just 42. News of his sudden death sent shockwaves through the faith community. How could the man who had preached victory over darkness be gone so soon? When police entered the room, they found an envelope containing a white powdery substance. Weeks later, toxicology reports confirmed what many feared: an overdose. For some, the revelation was a scandal. For others, it was a heartbreaking reminder that even the strongest among us can stumble. Beneath the headlines was not a fallen idol, but a man, human, fragile, and fighting silent battles. Thousands mourned his passing in Orlando, Florida, where gospel songs and tears filled the sanctuary. Standing before the grieving crowd, Reva Tims whispered words of strength through her pain. God is still in control. In late 2011, they announced that Pastor Paula White, a well-known televangelist and longtime friend of the Tims family, would take over as senior pastor. The decision sent shockwaves through the congregation. Members felt blindsided, angry, and betrayed. They believed Reva should have been given the chance to continue her husband's vision. Protests erupted, lawsuits were filed, and the church that once symbolized hope became divided by power and politics. Reva Tims fought back, not out of revenge, but out of principle. "This isn't about me," she said. "It's about honoring what God began through Zachery." Her calm strength earned respect, but the wounds ran deep. Attendance dropped, and the once vibrant ministry became a battlefield of conflicting loyalties. Pastor Paula White defended her appointment, saying she only wanted to bring unity and healing to a grieving congregation. But for many, the trust had already been broken. As years passed, the legal battles settled, but the emotional scars remained. New Destiny Christian Center continued under new leadership, but the spirit that once defined it could never be fully restored. Meanwhile, Reva Tims moved forward. She founded her own ministry, Majestic Life Church, where she continues to preach the same message she and Zachery once shared: faith, forgiveness, and grace. She refuses to let bitterness define her story. She often tells her congregation, Zachery's legacy should not be remembered for how he died, but for how he lived. And she's right. Because beyond the tragedy lies the story of a man who helped thousands find purpose, who turned his own pain into a message of hope. His life is proof that even those called by God are still human, fragile, flawed, and forever in need of grace. When you look back on the life of Pastor Zachery Tims, you see a man of extremes, extraordinary and ordinary, strong and broken. He rose from the streets to build an empire of faith, yet fell to the same darkness he once escaped. His story forces us to confront a painful truth about modern faith culture. We often place our pastors on pedestals so high that they can't admit their pain. We expect perfection from those called to lead us, forgetting that even the most anointed can still bleed. In one of his final sermons, Pastor Tims said words that today echo with haunting clarity. "You can be called by God and still be broken. But don't let your brokenness stop you from believing that God can still use you." Those words, meant for others, became a reflection of his own life. A man called by God, yet unable to escape his own struggles. But maybe that's the message his story was always meant to tell. That grace isn't just for the pure. It's for the weary, the wounded, the ones who stumble and still find the strength to rise again. Because even in failure, redemption remains. More than a decade after his passing, Pastor Zachery Tims' story still lingers. Not as gossip, but as a lesson. New Destiny Christian Center still stands. His sermons still circulate online, touching hearts across the world. His children continue to carry his legacy, and his message about hope, redemption, and the endless reach of grace still changes lives. His journey from the streets to salvation, from fame to failure, and finally, to faith's eternal rest, reminds us that the human soul is fragile, but grace is not. His life wasn't a story of defeat. It was a story of humanity. A reminder that even when we fall, God's mercy never runs out. So, what can we learn from Pastor Zachery Tims? That faith isn't about perfection. It's about perseverance. Even in failure, grace still speaks. His story reminds us that light can rise from darkness, and redemption never dies. If his journey moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more stories of faith and hope. Thanks for watching.